Hello, everyone, and welcome to ASAC, our weekly ASAC speaker sessions. I'm Luay Malahme, the General Manager of the School of Advanced Computing at Luminous Education. We're so excited to have you here. Actually, we have currently more than 100 participants in this session, and we're expecting more to come. This week, we have a very exciting topic, a topic that I think most of us would love to know more and more about it. It's about artificial intelligence with an amazing speaker, Jordanian, living in the United States, a very accomplished serial entrepreneur. He's managing also currently a recent company that he built around the artificial intelligence technology. And so to start with, basically, I will tell you a little bit about the agenda. As usual, I'll do the introduction, and then we have today our own Lana Isa. She is also lead instructor at the School of Advanced Computing at ASAC. And she will be basically coordinating and moderating the session. A few rules before we start. Basically make sure that you sit in a comfortable place and quiet place to make most out of the session. We will open the floor for questions during the Q&A part. So if you look down, if you want to write any question for our moderator or even for our speaker, you can write the question there. Please stay away from the chat part if you want the question to be considered. Also provide your inputs to our questions and polls. We will asking polls in the beginning and during, so make sure that you use the icons such as the hand raise and the chat box, and also the answering on the polls side. We also appreciate if you can respond to the end of the webinar. There will be a survey once we finish the webinar. You can answer our survey, so to make this experience better and better on a weekly basis. I will stop sharing my screen here, and I want to introduce and ask our moderator Lana to open her camera.
Hi,
Lana.
Hi, everyone.
So, Ahlan Fiki. Lana, before we start, I want to introduce her. So, a little bit background about Lana. Lana currently is the lead instructor of software engineering and BTech diploma in software engineering at the School of Advanced Computing. She has a master's degree in computer science, and she had published many research papers in the field of artificial intelligence. Her research interests are machine learning, computational creativity, and stochastic algorithms. I hope I pronounced it right.
Yeah.
So we want to have a better moderator for the session, and I will leave you to introduce our great speaker, Baha, and take it from there.
Thank you, Mr. Luay, for this introduction. Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our ASAC speaker session. Today is a special session about AI. First, I'd like to welcome our guest today, Mr. Baha Abunojain. He is a serial entrepreneur, technologist, and co-founder of Mixed Dimensions, a company, and another company called Baseet.ai, solving complex problems at the intersection between the digital world and the physical world. Also, he has a passion to tackle world-class challenges in the transformative tech. Mixed Dimensions, his company raised more than 15 million to date and is considered one of the leading 3D printing startups globally, which is, and also Baha was named like the MIT Technology Review Innovator under 35 MENA, EY, اللي هي Ernst Young Emerging Entrepreneur of the Year, Forbes Technology Council, and won several awards locally and internationally. He recently co-founded Baseet.ai, a low-code AI development platform in a mission to accelerate the delivery of AI-powered apps. So basically, Baseet.ai's mission is to make everyone use AI. Mr. Baha, welcome to our ASAC speaker sessions.
Thank you so much, Lana. Thank you, everyone, for attending this session. I'm really happy that I got the chance to present to you today. And I'm going to talk about a really important topic, which is why AI is actually the future and how it actually affects the way we will be doing our jobs, the way we manufacture things, the way we do businesses overall. So let me share my screen so you can see my presentation.
Before we start, Mr. Baha, I would like just to tell the audience that we have a poll question. You can answer it. It will appear on the screen now before we start this session. Okay, great. Okay, so until everyone answers the poll, I would like just to mention our topic today is the future of AI, and I'd like to add like a quick introduction until the poll ends. You know, with the fast changing pace of the world and global pandemic like COVID-19, the world is challenged to adopt automation faster, like more than ever, especially for jobs that require physical interaction or a complementary to the core of business. So now we need a mandatory quicker evolution of AI and more accelerated adoption of technology. This creates an environment and opportunity for bots to thrive and make a big portion of the existing businesses. And this is what we will discuss today with our speaker, Mr. Baha. Okay, I think the poll will end. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Lana.
Sure,
Yeah, so
I'll leave the mic to you.
Okay, cool. So as I said, I'm really excited to be presenting to you today and talking about a really important topic, which is why AI is actually the future and how it will impact jobs, how it will impact the way we do businesses in general, and how it is a big shift for humanity overall. I'll start by showing a small video. And you're actually not looking at real humans. You're actually looking at computer-generated humans that have their own personas. They are unique by nature. Each and every one is unique. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, so what I showed you and what you can see on the left side is actually a human that was automatically generated by a project called Neon by Samsung. This was recently introduced in CES 2020, and these are artificial humans that are designed to kind of replace humans in certain jobs. Like, for example, they can be influencers, they can be teachers, they can work as customer service. They have their own personality and they can actually evolve. So they can create new gestures and new ways of expressing themselves, and they can learn. So this is a huge project that was done by Samsung, and they designed two different projects in order to create those artificial humans. And the quality is really amazing. So when you look at this is like computer generated, you can't imagine how impressive this is. And the fact that these are, each one of them is unique with their own persona. So a big question that always, a big part of the population always asks is, what is AI? So what AI entails? It's in the fact, the ability to enable machines to do tasks that normally requires a human intelligence. So anything that needs some sort of intelligence is considered AI if a machine can actually do it. So repetitive tasks are not considered AI, but tasks that require some sort of intelligence or something that has to do with decision making, for example, translation, visual perception like object detection or figuring out what the camera is seeing, speech recognition, understanding the speech, learning new skill sets, problem solving, doing some sort of problem solving, planning, and having creativity, all are aspects of artificial intelligence. And by the way, the concept itself for artificial intelligence is not new. It was coined in Dartmouth College in 1956. And there was two programming languages designed for AI. One is called Lisp in 1958, and one was introduced in 1972 called Prolog. But the thing is, AI evolved over the years, and the new disciplines within the AI evolved, specifically deep learning. So the differences is artificial intelligence is the wide scope definition of how you can actually make machines learn and do reason like humans. But machine learning is how you can actually do that without explicitly programming them. And deep learning is how you can do that using neural networks, layered neural networks, and data. So that's the big difference between all the different aspects of AI. And there is a concept that is called software 1.0, which is the traditional way where we create software by writing code, and software 2.0, which is mostly data-driven. And when you look at both of these, one is actually based on actions. So you actually write your commands, which are, let's say, function calls or lines of code. And these represent what you want to achieve at the end. So it executes sequentially or in a certain order using your call stack, and then it gives you the final result. So that's the traditional way of doing programming and creating your own program, versus using data, which is you have some sort of a neural network which has multiple layers, and then you give it a set of data, so a data set, and that set of data represent what you want it to learn, and that's mainly represent the transition to software 2.0. So when you look at software 1.0 and software 2.0, you can see that in the traditional way of creating software, you're going to write a huge amount of code to achieve a certain task. And generally speaking, it's not intelligent. Mostly it's some kind of, let's say, an action or an entry to a database or whatever you would like to do. With software 2.0, it's mostly you write a small amount of code, but you give it a huge amount of data that is collected to give it some sort of artificial intelligence or make it learn a new task. And that task reflect the intelligence that we want it to do. Like, for example, when I want to train my software to actually be able to detect objects, I give it a set of images, a labeled set of images that represent that object that I want to train it on. So that's the way we train object detection. If I wanted to classify, let's say, text based on whether it is toxic, whether it is positive, you do the same thing. You give it a set of data, labeled data. There are disciplines that doesn't use data, but you can actually use labeled data to train it to classify whether that text is toxic or not.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. So, for instance, they could have me say things like, I don't know, Killmonger was right, or Ben Carson is in the sunken place, or, how about this, simply, President Trump is a total and complete dipshit. Now, you see, I would never say these things, at least not in a public address, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele. This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. It's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources. It may sound basic, but how we move forward in the age of information is going to be the difference between whether we survive.
So, as you can see from the video, this is actually a concept called deep fake, where you actually fake a certain personality, and you can make it say something that they didn't actually say, do certain movement that they didn't actually do. So it basically uses image processing, and it reflects a new identity to the person that you used. Like in the video that I showed, he actually used Obama, and you can find a ton of videos that uses deep fake nowadays. And there are even videos that you can't even notice the difference, because now it's a challenge. And there's a whole research on how they are now training AI to detect deepfake videos. So deepfake videos are created by AI, and then they trained AI to be able to detect deepfake videos. So that's the way it's evolving rapidly, due to the fact that with the latest GPUs, the ability to execute a huge amount of threaded functions at the same time, being able to train your model without waiting for years. Instead of that, you wait for days, and eventually you will wait for a few hours. That is accelerating AI hugely, plus all the availability of the different frameworks. Like now you can actually have access to out-of-the-box frameworks like TensorFlow, PyTorch, which you can actually use to build your AI model. And that accelerates research in the AI field. So if you go to GitHub, if you go to the internet now, you can find a huge amount of research available that allows you to do a lot of things and experiment with a lot of research that is done on AI. And it's impressive. And what I'm looking at now is, this is what China called China's social credit system. So basically, now in China, they're using AI to actually track people. They use it to give them some sort of a social credit rank, depending on their past behavior. So their history, whether they have criminal records, whether they didn't pay their loans, they can actually track them, rate them, rank them, and give them some sort of a number that represent whether this guy is doing well or not. And it's kind of scary to a certain extent, because now you're digitizing the way we deal with people. And this is actually something that all the different cameras in China are using to monitor streets for criminals. They're using it to make sure that even for coronavirus, they're using this. So when you look, for example, at what's happening with COVID-19, the coronavirus, so it's actually originated from China. But the big question is how China managed to control the situation, even though it was originated there and it's a big country, while cases like the US is actually skyrocketing. So when you look at the table in the left, you can see that US now is around 1 million cases, while China stopped at around 82,000, which is pretty much impressive how they actually controlled the virus. But when you look at the details, they actually used a number of things that relates to AI, like computer vision. They actually used computer vision, infrared to track possible cases. So what you're seeing is someone looking at using a surveillance system and monitoring using computer vision whether there is a possible case or not, without the need for a thermometer. So they can actually use the whole tracking system that they've built in the country to actually track the temperature of a certain person to detect whether that person might be infected or currently actively spreading the virus. Plus, they've done a huge amount of research when it comes to RNA analysis. So they've managed to reduce the time from 55 minutes to only 27 seconds using AI. This was based on an algorithm that was designed and developed by Peidu called linear fold. And also they used research from Alibaba to shorten the genetic analysis. And by the way, a lot of the genetic sequencing now being used to develop vaccines around the world is taken from their research. So China actually distributed all that research globally. And now all the different vaccines rely on that research that was accelerated by Alibaba's technology. And when you look at AI, so the influence of AI is actually going to hit the factories in a big way. Like the one on the one with the people, as you can see, is the Ford manufacturing facility, and it still actually uses labor to do the work. So there are a huge amount of people doing work, assembly, making sure the cars are in a good way. While on the other hand, all these robots are actually the Tesla manufacturing facility. So Tesla actually uses robots to manufacture their cars. So mostly humans monitor robots and just make sure that the whole pipeline is working smoothly. And this is why Tesla is still doing well during coronavirus, while factories that rely on human power like Ford is not doing that much on the other hand. So that's pretty much impressive how they managed to handle the situation. And by the way, China, in the recent years, they've done a tremendous amount of work, especially in AI and robotics, that most of the new factories are built around these technologies. So the old thinking that China is mostly labor is reducing by time. It's not actually accurate. Now China is gradually moving into more of a robotic and AI-driven manufacturing processes versus the traditional labor-intensive way of creating things. And most of the high-end research in AI is actually coming out of China. And most of the researchers are coming out of China, which is kind of impressive how the country switched from being mostly labor-intensive into being some sort of a country that rely on technology and the creativity. So I'm going to show you a robot that was built by Boston Dynamics, which is a company that operates out of Boston. And their robots are actually now released 6 months ago to be used in different industries. These are kind of smart robots that can do a lot of things. So from the video, you can see how a robot is actually being able to go into a really complicated and risky facility like oil and gas and take part of the job that typically a human would be doing, and reducing that risk of going into a risky field dealing with gas leaking or potential explosion, and being able to take temperature, detecting noise, or reading meters and stuff. And you can actually add your own models to these kinds of robots, which is kind of amazing how fast this is evolving and getting into the industry. But there is this assumption that AI will reduce jobs. So everyone thinks that AI will actually reduce jobs, but the fact is COVID-19 actually reduced jobs. So when it came, it actually reduced jobs big time. So we see that a lot of people are now facing hurdles doing their jobs, or they have went into unemployment. While in the fact, people who work in the tech industry or who has something to do with AI or anything that has to do with automation is still doing a really, they're doing well. So that has to do with the evolution of jobs. So every few decades, something comes in and the types of jobs are actually evolve. Like when the industrial revolution came in, the types of jobs switched into more of an industrial job rather than doing things on a small scale. It became more of a larger scale. Now there are new jobs that got introduced, and some jobs actually got eliminated. So AI will not reduce jobs from my own perspective. It will evolve certain jobs, and people need to adapt to that change. So instead of being labor intensive or physical jobs, it's mostly will be monitoring jobs, like making sure the robot is doing well, making sure the bot is doing well, making sure the AI gets learned. So AI needs to learn from somewhere, and typically that's the human part where we play a major role. So by time, that type of relationship will change, and the types of jobs available in the market will also change. Let's take a look at this example. So for example, Apple, which is pretty much, they don't do manufacturing. Apple, by the way, they do the designs mainly and the sales and everything that relates to that, while all the iPhones are actually being built by Foxconn. And Foxconn, as you can see, the number of employees for Foxconn is 1.3 million. This is a bit old, by the way, a few years back. And the number of employees for Apple is around 115, 16. And you can see the difference in terms of revenues. So even though Apple has a smaller amount of employees, 1/10 of the employees of Foxconn, they actually generate more revenue than Foxconn. And when you look at the average pay per hour, you will see also the difference, which is a huge, and the income. So yeah, that's definitely a huge difference between them. But Foxconn actually started adopting robotics in the last few years, and they started to change the types of jobs within the organization. And that is what is called, from a labor-based economy that relates on labor or physical work that doesn't require intelligence to a certain extent, to more of a knowledge-based economy. And yeah, so that's in general my talk, and happy to answer all your questions. Plus, please feel free to reach out to me, whether on my email or through Twitter and LinkedIn.
Thank you, Mr. Baha, for the very informative presentation. We had like a pool of questions at the beginning of this session. I will share the results now with everyone. As you can see, people were a little confused whether AI will replace humans or not. And most of you agreed that AI will cause significant unemployment, which is basically an assumption or a myth, and that was discussed by Mr. Baha, that AI will lead to evolution and change the type of jobs, not cause unemployment. Okay. We're now open for questions. Please ask not by chat on the question and answer tabs. We have multiple questions for now. Okay. Let's start with the first question. It's by an anonymous attendee for Mr. Baha. What are the prerequisites to learn AI? Do I need to have a computer science degree?
I don't think degrees are prerequisites. It's you can acquire knowledge without a degree. It's good to have a degree in a sense that you have a degree, but yeah, but knowledge you can acquire it even if you don't have a degree. So if you go in and start learning AI in general, doing research on it, watching different YouTubes, going into, let's say, TensorFlow tutorials, you can start learning it.
Yeah, this leads us to another question, which is how we can start learning AI, and you just answered that question by watching
Yeah.
tutorials, research, and so. We have a question here about, in particular, I think it's related to Baseet AI, the
Yeah.
company you co-founded. How do you think the AI models that provided by Baseet AI will help people outside the area of IT? Like, will it build AI-powered apps for businesses? How do you imagine this will happen?
Yeah, so actually the whole premise behind Baseet is to simplify the process and accelerate the process of creating an AI application. So you don't even need to code when you build applications on top of Baseet, because you can actually connect different nodes to achieve a certain set of functionalities. This can be done by simply, you can take a group of nodes and then connect those nodes like speech recognition, text analysis, and then you get some sort of intelligence, or you can build a bot on top of Baseet and use it, for example, for chat. You can use it for stock trading. You can build it, let's say, for object detection. So it gives you some sort of out-of-the-box ability to do things.
Yeah, so basically it's based on drag and drop. It's like a drag and drop models to build an AI-powered app, which is a great idea. Okay, we have a question. AI applications seems to affect politics faster than we thought it might. Is there any precaution people might want to take in order to control the effect of AI over politics? If that's...
Yeah, so deepfakes are a big problem at the moment. Obviously, not what everything you see is true, because now it's easy that you can fake anyone almost. And there are a lot of tools to be used to do that, but there are also tools to detect deepfakes. But in general, only rely on reliable sources, not just a message that came to you from Facebook or WhatsApp.
Yeah. Okay, a question from Yahya Abu Khalil. Are there any effective ways to train employees on handling AI in specific areas like the health sector, for example? Would workshops be enough for employees to start using AI in health sector, for example?
So there are certain tools that makes it easier to use. So AI by itself is a product. You can think of it as you build your program, but it's an intelligent program. So it depends on how you ship it to the user. There are a section, I think, called learnable AI or something that was developed by Microsoft, and it allows anyone to actually start training AI with only drag and drop as well, but you drag and drop data, not nodes. That's also an interesting project that allows non-technical people to do stuff with AI.
Yeah. Okay, we have another question here from Brahim Majdi. He thanks you for this amazing presentation. And he says, we know that there's a debate on which industry will benefit the most from AI and which industry will have a negative effect from AI. Can you please share your insights about this?
Yeah, so in terms of industry, I would assume everyone will benefit in some sort, because AI is a general field where it takes a certain tasks that require intelligence from a human and allow a machine to do it. So let's think of it this way. So you have a limited number of humans, and they can do one task at the same time. If you take that task and allow a machine to do it, and that task can be then replicated, then you're not limited by the amount of work that can be done for that certain task. So that's where AI is actually different, because let's say there are 100 million programmers, and you start teaching AI to do things like writing code, let's assume, but it's not an easy thing. Then you will later on you will have the power of more than that quantity. Or if you teach let's take customer service, which is more obvious because now there are bots that can do that. But let's take customer service. So when you have customer service, you have limited number of people who are actually doing that job because we're limited in quantity. So imagine how when you train a bot to do that job, it's easy to replicate. It's just copy and paste it. You can run multiple instances of that bot. So you're not limited by the number of individuals who can do that task. Now it's about how many instances you're running to do that task, which kind of takes some sort of specific jobs and eliminate those jobs, but at the same time it evolves a new set of jobs, like mostly monitoring, analytics. When I think of AI, I think of it mostly pushing people to be more of using their own brains rather than using their own physique to a certain extent, because a lot of people now are actually making money only from labor jobs, and labor jobs are not paying that much. So at the end of the day, they're not getting paid that much for labor jobs, and it's not so great for them. This kind of switch might be actually very positive, because now even governments are thinking of ways to put taxes on robots that can be used to pay for individuals who are actually citizens of a certain country. Like one of the things that Bill Gates suggested is tax robots. So if you're using robots for manufacturing, then you pay taxes, and that taxes is actually paid to people affected by it.
Yeah. This actually answered many questions, like will AI outsmart people? And you just said that people should actually rely on their brains more than they rely on AI. Okay. What about the self-awareness in AI? How far are we, like, do we have the self-awareness that enables us to use AI efficiently? How far are we from the awareness needed?
I think still, so there are a general perception of people knowing AI, but the general awareness of it affects and how it affects actually humanity is still not quite there. So I think, yeah, it needs time once it actually goes into the industry in a more visible way, because it's kind of being adopted on a fast base. But by the way, it's increasing almost 50 or 60% per year, which is a huge amount of growth per year. But eventually, once people actually start seeing the effects of AI, like when you call a customer service and it's actually not a human answering, now it's not so great, that experience, because it's kind of a menu that you navigate. But eventually that would be like the Neon project, where it's more of an intelligent bot that is actually answering you. So it will have more understanding of your needs, not guiding you through a process. So these kinds of bots that are currently taking the jobs of a customer service is not actually AI driven. They're actually guided. So they have a path and they guide you through that path with predefined answers. AI is not that. AI is some sort of intelligence. So there are a few bots out there that has AI in them, but eventually, once businesses start to adopt more AI in different tasks, like RPA, which is some sort of task automation, robotic task automation, that would also change a lot of things.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So as you know, with the spread of AI everywhere, we now have IoT, which is Internet of Things. Now there's internet everywhere, and we can have AI everywhere. Are the AI systems themselves ready to defend the AI systems from hackers or any cybersecurity issues? Did we reach that level?
No, I don't think so. Not yet. No.
Yeah, I agree. We have a couple of questions in particular related to education, since that we're an educational institution. How do you think AI could help and support the current online learning process?
In terms of AI, like
Yeah.
when you looked at like for example the NEON project, so
Mhm.
these are all kind of new researches, so they need a few years before they can actually go into the public. But like the NEON project, you can actually create experts and they can play a role in schools. I know a company that actually use AI to evaluate the students' abilities. Like it can evaluate based on their answers on the paper. They can evaluate how much time they are taking for thinking, their focus, whether they are stressed or not, and then use that to suggest new questions based on their abilities, their ranking within a group of people, and then suggest new questions that actually help increase the level. So it tailors and personalizes the experience of the education by itself to that specific person, because some people actually take education from a visual perspective, so they have the ability to understand things more visually. Some people like to read a lot, some people like to get some sort of an interactive explanation. So current educational processes are not designed that way, so it's one process fits all. So you don't actually give them a personalized, individualized experience of how they learn, depending on their abilities or the way they adjust information. So yeah, so there are a lot of ways where AI will influence education, and whether it is individualized practices, suggestions, or even individualized exams based on the skill set or the abilities of that specific person, or the ability to actually analyze and track the progress of that individual and suggest interventions to increase their ability to get better results.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I worked on something similar myself. Like I've built a deep learning based model that detects that recognizes students' faces in a classroom and tells whether a student gets the material the instructor is presenting or not. I worked on something similar.
Yeah.
We have a lot of questions. We'll try to answer يعني, as much as we can, but we have limited time. So we choose like the most important questions. Do you think also AI will support not just the virtual technology or the virtual world, but also the physical world in some industries, let's say?
Yeah, so it gets applied to robotics mainly. So most of, like the video I showed where robotics is actually one of the areas that AI is influencing big time.
Yes.
Yeah, so definitely, yeah, it influences areas. In my 3D printing startup Mixed Dimensions, we actually used AI for 3D printing. So we used it to enhance the quality of the prints. So it definitely touches a lot of things when it comes to even the way you manufacture things, enhancing the speed. And so even when some companies like Ford are actually using AI to generate designs that works physically in a much better sense than what was designed previously. So it generates structures that are stronger, lighter, better, that can actually be manufactured. So all of these things are really important parts.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, Ford is a very known company for their usability designs, and now we know why. Okay,
Yeah.
there are many questions about this topic, to be honest. Yani, many questions asking the same thing. Will AI spread without control? Will it affect us badly? Will it become dangerous? All of these questions, everyone are asking about it.
So that's a big debate. So there are two views. One is the Elon Musk view, which is he's a big believer that AI will actually
Yeah.
be a threat unless we control it. And the other one is the Jack Ma view, which is no, it won't. And there is a video that you can watch for them debating this certain topic on YouTube. So you can actually watch it and see. My own perspective is, yeah, it's not there yet. I don't think it's still early on, to be honest. And as far as AI is, it's still kind of a toy compared to a person. It can do a better job on a certain task, but humans can do thousands of tasks efficiently. So it's like one threaded CPU versus a GPU at the moment, a high-class GPU. So it's different.
Yeah. So if we're saying this, then will we be able to trust AI systems to make some decisions for us?
For one single task, yeah, it's kind of depends on the accuracy, but yeah, it can do that. It relies on data that we supply, so it relies on the knowledge that we gave it. So if we're giving it, let's say, a huge data set of whether of all the different comments, let's say on Facebook, and it should decide whether this is toxic comment or not, then most likely it will figure out what's toxic or not, because you have a huge data to learn from. So it's kind of really good at specific tasks and can achieve it in a really fast way, which is impressive. But it won't be replacing humans per se in terms of intelligence anytime soon, at least.
Yeah, and I agree on that, because like machine learning models, actually they give you the result of what they were trained for, not what you want as a human. So be careful while training your AI models.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a couple of questions regarding AI. What's the most popular programming language used in AI, for example?
Python. Currently it's Python, the most popular one. But for production quality, so the high-end stuff, they use R, C++, Go to a certain extent. These are for high-end production quality, because when you go to areas where speed is really important, Python is good to a certain extent, but then you need to optimize it. But at the same time, there are ways to compile Python to C++. So actually Tesla uses that approach. So they program in Python and then they compile it to C++. They convert all the code to C++ for speed. So they have the advantage of frameworks, availability of frameworks, easy to learn, easy to find developers for. But at the same time, they created their own pipeline to optimize the code so that it's fast enough for like, for example, their autopilot.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they need every single millisecond.
Okay, and continuing from that point, what certain positions now companies are looking for? Like what are the positions that companies working in the AI field are looking for?
Data scientists. So so there was a research from LinkedIn last year. In the US alone, there is a shortage of 150,000 data scientists. So there is a huge demand on data scientists. And it's really growing fast, because the industry by itself is growing fast.
Yeah. Okay. We have a question about the security. Will AI like break or violate human security?
If you train it to.
Yeah. Okay. We have also we have a lot of questions, a lot of long questions actually. This topic is very interesting and attracting many people. But basically, most of the questions are about the moral perspective or the certain awareness. Like, as we said before, like, how will we consider the moral perspective, or how are we going to control the moral perspective of AI?
Yeah, so that's also a big debate at the moment. But when you think of AI, it's actually, so you train a machine on a set of data that you supply to it. So it reflects your own moral of things to a certain extent. So when you do that, it represents what you believe is moral or right. So if you train it to do something wrong, of course, that's your own moral of things. So it's kind of challenging because it's a reflection of what people want to automate from their own behaviors and tasks and stuff. Yeah, and there is a big debate around how to actually control it. There is also a big debate around who owns the model. So if I go in and take a huge amount of data from somewhere, I don't own that data, and use it to train a model that can do a specific job on it. Who owns that model? Is it the one who owns the data, or is it me who created the model? So that's also a big debate. So still there are a lot of areas with debate.
Yeah, actually, yes, especially about the moral and the ethics part. Okay, some people are asking about how is programming or coding in the AI is related to learning mathematics. Like, do I need to have deep knowledge in mathematics to be able to write AI programs?
To understand the concepts, yes, you need deep understanding of mathematics. If you want to play with it, you don't need to. So if you use TensorFlow or PyTorch, all of these frameworks are actually designed to make it really easy for you to program normally and achieve some sort of AI capabilities. So you don't need to know how the underlying, let's say, neural network and weights actually work, because that's on the probability side of things when you go to neural networks. So you need to understand probability, and you need to understand more on the mathematics part if you want to go deep into how neural networks are being built. If you want to only use neural networks, that's a different story.
Yes. Okay, we have one last question about, okay, can we actually create robots that are environmentally friendly and without violating others' security? Okay, I think we answered this question, right? Am I right? Yes, okay. Okay, I think by that we finished answering all of the questions. Most of them are repeated questions. Thank you, Mr. Baha. Thank you so much for joining us in this very interesting ASAC session. It was actually very interesting. All of us enjoyed this talk about AI. Hopefully we can have you on another sessions later on. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for attending our session for today. Enjoy your time.